This is part one of a three-part series recorded at the legendary Electric Lady Studios. Tom Elmhurst was a 1-year-old when Electric Lady first opened its doors in 1970. Today, Tom resides in Studio C as Electric Lady's lead mix engineer. Tom began his career at SARM Studios in London under the tutelage of Trevor Horn and spent close to a decade in residence mixing at London's Metropolis Studios. Needing a change, Tom found his way to New York City and has become an integral part of the community that makes Electric Lady what it is. He has received 13 Grammy Awards for his mixing work and holds the record for winning the most Grammys in one night, taking home 6 in 2017 for his work with Beck, Adele, David Bowie, and Cage the Elephant. Tom was kind enough to show us around his mix room and share his insights and passion about the craft that he has mastered.
It's so great to have you, man, because I know we've been talking about doing this for a while. And so, my first question would be,
right,
what brought you here?
Okay, that's a good question.
You're obviously not from...
I'm not from these shores. No, I'm from London. I grew up in Paris and came to London when I was about 7 years old.
Oh,
wow. And then I was in boarding school for like 10 years, between the age of 18 and 18. So I've never felt particularly rooted anywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I did my sort of apprenticeship at SARM Studios with Trevor Horn. Was lucky enough to work with him for sort of the best part of 3 or 4 years.
Wow. Now, what years of that was that?
So I started at SARM in '92, March '92.
Wow.
By the summer of '93, I was sort of I was an assistant to an engineer of Trevor. And Trevor at that time, it was still in the era of sort of, large budget recordings, and he would have several rooms on the go, several engineers, multiple assistants, and for me, I sort of compare it to like I got a sort of Yale Harvard type apprenticeship. The cutting edge, sort of the beginning of digital. So we had what was it called, Sound Tools back in the day.
Oh yeah,
right. So
that's right.
We had everything from the first Euphonics console in the world to the first SSL-J series in the world. So I got to look at everything from the sort of end of the tape days. I spent a couple of years on my knees lining up a Studer, right through to the beginning of Pro Tools and the evolution of recording, onto a hard disk.
Right, and
that's not what brought me to New York.
No, but that's where you started.
But what records were you seeing being made when you were at SARM?
So when I was at SARM, I was working on the second Seal record, with Trevor. So Kiss from a Rose, that era. And then all kinds of stuff from sort of Rod Stewart to Tina Turner to all kinds of stuff, to a lot of sort of club stuff. They had 6 rooms at SARM, four in West London, 1 in East London, and a residential facility where I ended up working with people like Morrissey on a couple of records. Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Were you kind of in awe of that stuff? Was that like a lot for you, or you were just like totally...
Do you know what? Having started with Trevor, everything from there has been manageable.
Right.
That was the first job I ever had, was the most stressful job that I've had in 27 years that I've been in studios.
That's
now.
Saying something, because
but I
a lot of people
that.
walk in that room that could be intimidating.
Yeah, I guess. For me, I guess it's like, jumping into the deep end, which I kind of like to do with any project I work on. My mentality is just sort of, go in deep, hard, quick. And so I've never really had fear since then. Because obviously, while I was with Trevor, I was still learning, still making mistakes, still not completely understanding, why a producer would want to do something or change something. And
but did you know this was going to be your job? You were going to do this?
I think I knew after doing, say, several album projects out at a residential facility where I would, you'd be there for 3 months. I loved the first day. I loved setting up a drum kit. I loved miking it up. I liked getting all the band going. And then, no offense, after that, watching a bass player for 2 weeks do overdubs, it wasn't for me. I have the attention span of a young child, and to this day. So for me, my current workflow is a song a day, and that song's sort of part of my life for that day, and then it's gone. It's another one.
Clear Mountain said a similar thing to us when we talked to him a couple of months ago, where he said, like, he realized early on he didn't really care about producing, right? He just loved mixing.
Yeah, I had to go producing. I tried it with a couple of bands. I was young, and I just didn't feel, and I still don't feel in a way that I had the right or the permission to sort of challenge an artist about its lyrics, about what he wanted to say. And I figured that my sort of production gene, if you like, could fit in with this new technology, which
Right.
is Pro Tools. You know, every day to some extent, I'm doing some sort of production work, whether
Right.
it's arrangement stuff or you know, manipulating the parts that are already there, and so I get all the sort of frustrated artist, frustrated producer stuff. I get to release it while I'm mixing. I feel
That's
and
right.
that's crucial. That's a crucial stage for that kind of stuff, right? If you're doing edits on a song, like making it or arranging it, you know, in a better way, in a I don't know, just a way that you perceive as better. I mean, that's a fantastic moment to do that.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because I mean, you're obviously hearing it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's really different on every project I work on. Some songs speak to me a bit more, and I feel like doing things, and I do things, and it's not adding things for the sake of it. It's manipulating the parts that are there to make something more, to make more of a moment, to make more of a dynamic, you know.
Right.
But it's not compulsory. Some multi tracks
Right.
I get up, they've been beautifully recorded, the production is on point, and you do your job, you know.
Do you feel like at a certain point, like you listen to a song and you do stuff because you feel like maybe you want it to engage you more? Is it a thing where it's like, oh, this is just sitting around, let me manipulate a chorus and make it more entertaining for you? You know what I mean? Is that the thing you hear when you listen? Or you just do it by instinct?
Yeah, I gotta say it's instinct.
Right.
It's just a gut feeling, and you know, I have a sort of process whereby once I said yes to a project, once I've been offered something and I'm going to go ahead and do it, I don't listen to it ever again until I actually have it up the board, because there's a profound sort of psychological imprint that's made if you keep listening to something,
Right.
and straight up you stop being able to change, to affect change. And as a mixer, my one thing is the ability to be, you know, critically objective from minute one.
Yeah.
So I don't want to imprint this idea of what the song is on my head. I've heard it, and then I've got an idea of exactly what I want to do, and then it's just a case of doing it.
Right. Stuart has a similar thing where when he's mixing records, he doesn't listen to it until it's mastered.
Hey,
That's great. I'm going to use that. I'm using that.
hey. So speaking of mixing records, while I was walking over here, I was thinking, because both of you guys do a lot of that, just like you get mixes and that's the gig. And, you know, to like make a comparison to like a sports thing, a relief pitcher, they used to call them relief pitchers in baseball, right? Now they're kind of the most important
They call them closers now.
closers.
That's the actual.
And
So
kind
it's
of,
what's the guy who come on late in the day and says
The last inning and finishes the game.
but the
tight
whole game is sort of paced around knowing when you're going to bring that person in,
Right.
who's going to like shut the door and
close it, business.
close it and bring it
Yeah.
home.
Right.
And it's kind of like mixing, right? That's your gig is, you know,
Yeah, you're the business end of the record,
Right.
in terms of you're closing the deal.
yeah.
Arguably, it's the most stressful.
Oh, it's crucial.
It's the most stressful
I think
part
it's crucial.
because it's, you know, it's akin to delivering a child. You actually, the artist has to commit to something, and
Right.
yeah, and feel 100% about the fact that they're going to live with this for the rest of their life. It's
Right.
it's like it's the final portrait at the wedding or whatever.
Yeah. But also in that, the great closers, you don't ever see them like start a game. They do just that. You, like they're never really ones, and they're pitching just like
Yeah.
they're doing the same kind of thing, but that muscle becomes just about how to close and make it as the best thing it could possibly be and win the game, so to speak.
Right.
But anyway, that was my
Yeah,
walkover.
I think that's totally valid. That's
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's obviously if you keep doing it, you know, you could Malcolm Gladwell sort of 10,000 hours thing where I may have done 40 or 50,000 hours now of this, and you become very, very intuitive and instinctive about your objectivity to a particular song mix. And because I prefer to work on an album format, but I still enjoy the project of a record. It takes me a few songs to get into it, but once I find the groove, once I've got to know the people, the artists, everything becomes quite natural,
Right.
and there's a flow, and that's what I'm working towards.
Right. And what's the percentage of attended to unattended mixes?
Yeah, good question. It's definitely over 60%. I mean, ideally, I want everyone to attend.
Right.
Sometimes just, logistically, it's not possible for the artist because
Right.
they're maybe already promoting the single that we mixed earlier or so on. But on the whole, most artists come down.
Right.
I want them to come down.
That's great.
Yeah, there's no exclusion in that sense
Right.
at all. But I do ask them for a few hours by myself
Right.
to navigate what's there.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, having once heard the song and said yes, I haven't listened to it since that moment.
Amazing.
So I need that little time for it to be, because it's a mess for a minute while I'm mixing, because
Right.
I'm finding it.
Right.
And
And are you throwing paint, like just trying shit to
yeah,
see?
throwing stuff around, seeing what I can push, what I can pull. Where do I need the dynamic to hit? What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
What are they trying to do here?
Right.
And once I've sort of ingested that information, I can then sort of gear myself towards what needs to be done
Right.
as well. Yeah.
Is it important for you to know the band, like to go to see the band or listen to their other records, or you just want to go at what they give you?
I think if I've heard something from the band and I'm into it and I've said yes, at that point I'm already committed. That there's something melodically that's talking to me, which is
Right.
melody's my strongest sort of driving area. Hence I work with with singers and you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
So once I've got that sort of melodic addiction, if you like, I know where I'm going. I know what I want to hear when I sit down.
Right.
And it's just a case of doing it, and
Right.
how it comes about is different every time, but there's a process.
Well, we went like light years just now. How did you get here?
How did I get here because
Electric Lady here.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay.
I've been coming to New York sort of off and on when I was working. I was based out of Metropolis in London for, I don't know, the best part of 8 or 10 years.
You had a room there?
I had a room there similar to here, Studio C as well.
Same desk?
Same desk, a VR.
Studio C.
And it was-
What desk is that? So just so
That's a VR.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
72. And I was in a Studio C in London. I was coming to New York, and every time I landed at JFK and would sort of, see the bright lights of Manhattan, I was like, something would just kick in, this buzz, this energy. And I got, like we all do, I started getting complacent in the room I was in London. The same route to work, the same journey, and I needed a change. I wanted a change, and I came out here and I spent 10 days working in A, and checked out the building and checked out the people. Met Lee, obviously, and it just so happened that Rich Costey had just left Studio C and it was empty.
Oh wow.
And I checked out Avatar for a minute. And I don't know, it was just for me, again, instinct.
Right.
I came here and,
Well, you built a beautiful scene up here.
no, thank you.
It's also a
really-
great block to be on. From my time here over the last couple of years, or since like the mid '90s, like it's just great to walk out of this block. Do you live in the neighborhood? Or?
I live 4 blocks away.
Dude, so that's the best.
Yeah,
right. And you got
My life can sometimes, for months, consist of about 6 blocks.
yeah.
From the park.
But it's a great
to-
6 blocks.
It's a fucking great 6 blocks.
You know,
as
that's
as
the thing.
blocks go,
Yeah.
it's a good, yeah.
Because also, I know I was here like a year and a half ago, and I was next door, and you had the pooches were hanging out.
They're here.
Love the
I know.
pooches.
Yeah.
And it was so great to like come out and just see the 2 little guys running around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's very relaxing.
Like
They're
left and right.
You've hit on something, because I think the dogs take the edge off.
yeah.
When I do have artists come down, which is most of the time, the first 20, 30 minutes is them and us all sort of figuring out our personalities, and the dogs just break the ice.
Yeah.
Because I'm so aware that first listen for an artist, especially if they don't know my room,
Yeah.
is critical.
Yeah. Right.
And there's a couple of things I do to make the listening, that first listen, a process.
Do you give them a reference, something to listen to get used to the room?
I
or-
play it really quiet on the overtones
Right.
so that we can talk over it.
Right.
Gotcha.
And what invariably happens is I'm still sort of fiddling, the dogs will be running around, but I'm playing it, and they're listening, and if it's a band, I'll notice a couple of them look at each other and go like, where's the bass? Literally, like, that, I see slight concern, and that's exactly what I want to see.
Yeah.
Because what I know is, after that first listen of a mix, if I play it super loud on my 50 ATCs, everyone, they'll have their head flattened against the wall.
Yeah.
But they won't probably say anything super intelligent after that first listen.
Right.
It's too much pressure, it's too much noise, too much excitement.
Right.
So I break it in, play it quiet on the overtones, and by the end of it, everyone's that awkward silence after a first playback of a mix. and I'll sort of wander around, chat, see what's going on, and then I'll say, do you want to hear on something a bit louder? Do you want to hear on something a bit bigger? Then I'll play it on the 50s, and you
Right.
just see smiles.
Right.
Because suddenly the whole frequency range is available, and
Right.
they go, oh, there's the bass.
Yeah.
And
But it's so interesting because, and I know you worked with Tony Visconti. We had him on.
Yeah.
And he, his big thing was talking about the process.
Right.
Like process of, and it really is very similar to what you just mentioned, which is there's a interpersonal process that allows people to get comfortable listening.
yeah.
And it's so great that the dogs are part of that because they really are.
I mean, there's no doubt they reduce anxiety.
Oh, they're great.
Animals, and I'd say 99% of people, the clients I've worked with, they find a favorite one. One seems
Right,
to bond
right.
with an artist particularly. You mentioned Visconti. Well, in the end, I think when we were mixing Black Star with David Bowie, he brought his dogs in, and his PA Coco, she had dogs. We had a freaking dog farm up there. So there's
Kennel.
like 4 of them up there for a couple of days.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's really special. And
Yeah.
It's also special because I love the fact that you let them. They
roam.
I go down to A and they're
Yeah.
down there
Yeah.
and they're hanging, and all of a sudden,
No, they were cool coming into the D room when I was there. It was like
Yeah.
great. I was like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?"
Yeah.
They're
Well,
very buddy-like.
One in particular, Hope, is she's a wanderer.
She is a wanderer.
We've discovered that she also likes to clean up people's food after they finish
Yeah,
their.
that's helpful.
Yeah, so she's got a little belly on her, and Donnie the Frenchie, she doesn't leave my sight. So if I
Oh, so
move,
they're both girls.
both girls.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Donnie was called Donnie because she's called Donnie Priscilla because I was supposed to get 2, and I was going to call one Elvis and one Priscilla, and I thought 3 dogs. My son, I thought I'm going to look like a dog walker here. So, so we just got the one, and I was watching The Big Lebowski quite a lot when I was mixing, and she was a puppy barking on the couch, and I would be like, "Shut the fuck up, Donnie."
You're out of your element, Donnie.
Shut the fuck up, Donnie. And I love that movie. And so I called her Donnie Priscilla. That was it.
fantastic. And what about the fact that, like, do you take a break and get to walk them and like clear your head? Is that like part of it too?
It is and it isn't. I do have a dog walker friend who's actually got them right now. But what I do, the way I sort of structure my day, and it's really quite structured in a strange way, is whatever time I get here, within half an hour of getting here, I've got the multi-track up, everything that's part of the mix up. I do the outputs myself, so I know the geography of the multi-track. Because I might never have seen this multi-track before in my life. But it'll have been through a whole process in here with Brandon, my assistant.
He sort of preps it for you.
Yeah, because my whole thing is about condensing information,
Right.
so that when it comes when it goes into that room, into the mix room, I just see on the screen the principal elements of a mix,
Right.
and that can be from bouncing down 30 tracks of backgrounds to a stereo pair.
Right.
There could be 8 tracks of guitars that have got room mics and all
Right.
that. I'll probably condense all that information down to as little as possible, so I can very quickly jump in. Like I said, within half an hour, I'll have a balance.
Right.
I'll have a balance of the whole song.
So-
I'll know the multi-track.
So Brandon helps you with that, and then if
But
you want,
that's happened the day before, 2
Right.
days before.
But if
And that
then
happens in this room.
that happens in this room.
Gotcha.
But
The
then if-
only thing that happens in that room is mixing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There's
but then if you say, "Oh shit, I need that high voice,"
Exactly.
in the group, you just call him and say,
I stand up. I don't have to call him. I use these things I use these legs, and I walk in here and I say, Brandon, give me the splits on the backgrounds again. We need the third harmony
Right.
up a bit.
Right.
Oh, give me that room mic separately.
Right. Yeah.
Rebounce those guitars. Give me the room mic separately.
Awesome.
So, and I can always tell because we label things BN if they are a bounce. Because my whole thing is I don't want to look at 160 tracks.
Right.
It's too much for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who I am. I know how I mix.
Right.
I need as least possible information.
Right.
And mixing purely for me is about distilling an idea. So you're going from 200 tracks, it comes down through here to 60 tracks. Then I use 24 channels for all my audio.
That's great.
For all the music, if you like, and drums,
Right.
bass, and then another block of 8 for guitar. So I'm never using more than 32 outputs.
Right.
And that's from maybe a session that comes in at
Fabulous.
200 tracks.
"Wow,
And now also, I find that a lot of times you'll get like 4 or 5 guitar tracks of one performance, a DI, like you said, room mics, and it's too much.
It's too much. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just can't deal with it. I had this thing when I was working in London where I would demand my assistant to make all the tracks fit on one screen. If I have to scroll down or up, there's too many tracks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, obviously screens got bigger.
Yeah,
for
right.
so that became problematic. And they gave you that mini option.
Yes, that's
yeah.
right.
So suddenly there's a lot of tracks.
Have you ever not mixed on the desk?
By choice, no.
Right.
For me, it's still very much a tactile experience mixing.
So you push faders?
Fuck yeah.
Fucking great. See? Finally.
That
Finally.
first half
Someone
hour
for me.
That first hour for me, I'm standing up, moving
Right.
around like a maniac.
Right.
It's very loud.
Right.
And I'm trying to get myself excited.
Right.
I'm trying to make myself perform.
Right.
Like do something.
It is a performance.
Yeah,
Right.
that initial half hour, an hour. Yeah. And that's where you set the tone for the rest of the mix.
Right.
So
Do you work regular hours? Like, do you function better?
Yeah, I mean, I do now. I have to say, like, if I go back 10 years or say even more, 15, I can do what took me a day and a half in 20 minutes
Amazing.
now.
Wow.
Before I would shove the drums up and start EQing the bass drum.
Right.
Who gives a shit?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Straight up right now, I want the whole multi-track. I want everything, all the information up within 15, 20 minutes. And finding that balance, which is what we used to be called, balance engineers, and I still think of myself as one.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be no EQ either. There'll be nothing.
Right.
I might switch in a compressor on a vocal
Right.
to help me out, but that first half hour, I'm just blasting it and I'm jumping around and seeing where I'm going.
Right.
And, you know, I've got this idea in my head of what I want to hear and I'm seeing what's possible. You know, I don't know when I get sent something to listen to and you know, do you want to mix this, Tom? I don't know if that version they sent me took them weeks to get
Right.
to
Right.
or is a shitty rough mix at 4 a.m.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So sometimes I have horrendous, you know, surprises and sometimes I'm beating the rough mix quickly early
Do
on.
you reference that rough?
I have to be very careful with that. It goes back
How
to
so?
because it goes back to what I was saying before. If I'm sent a mix to do, I listen to it, I say yes, and I have a rule about saying no. That if I'm going to say no to a project, I do it within 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The idea being I'm not wasting anyone's time. They can go find someone else. You know, just
Right.
keep it clean. But once I said yes, I don't listen to it until the day I mix it, and then. After that hour of sort of me jumping around, being super excited, turning it up, finding the low end, getting all that, I might quickly flick.
Right.
It's always there. It's always very close for me to listen
Right.
to. But I just want to see if am I miles away from where they were?
Right.
I've got to remember that there's some thought that's gone into that mix that they've
Right.
sent me.
Right.
At some point, the participants, you know, producer, engineer, artist, management, have gone, yeah, this is where we're going with this. So I can't ignore that.
Right.
I have to respect it, but I can't listen to it too much because if I hear it too much, I'll start doing it.
Right.
That's the thing I
And
would
all I'll
worry
do,
about.
I'll just end up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I would
that's-
worry about like
and
getting
that-
used to that and trying to chase that
Yeah.
as opposed to your own instincts.
And then what's the point of getting
Yeah.
me involved in the
Yeah.
first place?
Right.
So it's taken me some time, but I've got to the point where once I know the lie of the land, once I know where everything sort of should be, I just don't want to hear that anymore.
Right. Do
It helps with things like, you know, background. If there are a lot of background vocals and detail, I might need to check, you
Right.
know,
Right.
just to see where they had things. And,
Right.
well, yeah.
Do you have to touch stuff up? Do you do recalls and
We never do recalls. I've done, I think, 2 board recalls in 6 years.
That's
here.
amazing.
We have a very sort of, not complex is not the right word, but very detailed way of printing stems, which allows me to phase out elements of the mix.
Right.
So I can print a mix and then he'll print stems, my assistant, which are almost as big as the multi-track
Right.
that he's given me. But it allows me, because I do quite a lot of work on my mix bus, you know, a month, 6 months later, I can bring the drum stem back, reverse the phase of it, and it'll cancel it out of the mix.
Do you
Then
do
you-
stems with the bus compressor or
I
without?
do. No, we do it with.
Yeah, I find that's better, right?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm quite old school in the sense that I still make the vocal, being sort of the loudest element in the mix.
Right.
That's what's pushing the manly.
Right.
But we do it in a certain way, especially with. I think we find that Brandon will help me more, but effects are the things, you know, reverbs and so on and delays that can complicate the phase thing. But my idea is that I can keep the the guts of my mix and the mix bus compression, but I can then go back and change things. I can bring all the guitars back and reverse phase them, remove them from my mix, and then bring back them and manipulate them in different ways.
Right. Do you have to do that often? Like
Every time.
right.
Yeah, people are wise now to what's available on Pro Tools. I mean, I can think of like the Beck record I worked on. We spent 3 weeks mixing that and 4 months tweaking it.
Right.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's
So all the records, straight up, most mixes of mine stay on the console for a mix for me is like 4 hours, 5 hours. It'll then take 3 hours or 2 hours to print the stems.
Right.
And then from there on, we have it and we can manipulate. Someone will come back to me a month later.
How long did you, I mean, that sounds like you really have a system here. How long did it take for you to like figure out this is how to do it?
I have to give credit to the assistants I've had, who are all far more technically, intelligent than I am.
Ben, I remember Ben.
Ben specifically came up with the phase reverse idea.
yeah, the phase thing is great.
Because for me, what I missed with stems was that they would come back, they would be okay. What you get with stems is you get a bit more air back than you did from the mix. But I hit my compressor quite hard in the mix. The EQ's doing a lot, and I also use something called the Crane Song, which has a sort of tape simulation, slight harmonic distortion, and I like all that.
Right.
So if I come back with stems, that's missing because it's not all going at the same time. So my thought was I want to keep the integrity of the mix as much as possible, but what if I want to take the drums out and rebalance them completely? Well, now I can.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
Do you ever print the tape?
I haven't printed this tape in a minute, I'll be honest.
People don't really request.
Is it because you don't have did you used to have a tape machine?
I
and
used
then
to print all the time to tape.
But you still have a tape machine in the room, or?
There's a 2-inch 24 track, but it's mainly it's there for
Heat.
nostalgic reasons.
Right.
Just reminds me of my
The
old
smell of tape.
I mean, straight up with what I could print to 1/2 inch. I could, but there was a period when 1/2 inch wasn't available.
I know, yeah.
And I don't know. A couple of times we've done it at the mastering stage. We've sort of taken mixes, 2496 mixes, and put them on tape.
Right.
But I'm not missing anything from the way I work, so I'm not. I'm not chased. I'm not. Yeah, that's the only way I can put it. I'm not missing anything.
Do you, speaking of mastering, do you attend?
No, never.
I'm with you.
No.
Who's your, like? Do you have a group of guys you go to, or people?
Yeah, the Sterling guys. I mean, Tom Coyne did a lot of work for me. Bless him.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, absolutely. I miss him. And obviously Randy Merrill now. I use Randy a lot.
Right.
Randy's mastered pretty much everything I've done this year.
So you don't attend because you feel like let them do their thing, or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Bob Ludwig actually is another.
Sure.
I've worked with Bob quite a lot. I don't want to be in that environment. I don't understand it, and I'm going to have problems with the mix. I'm going to want to go running back to the studio and change.
But also,
shit.
I'm sure you're busy. You're also busy. I mean, a lot of times with me, I think the same thing with you. It's like we're working. Like, and apart from the old days when we used to go to Sterling for the free lunch, which was fantastic. Other than that, it's like, Greg's mastering a record for you or for me. We're in the studio that day. I can't really take the day off and.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you. I'm on something else.
Yeah.
And I also think it's a nice time for the artist they actually get to sort of cut the umbilical cord, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Because what I try and do when I'm mixing an album project, and I do it quite early on, is I start asking for structure, for sequence for the record, and mixes get put into a session, and I'm pushing them like, where's the gap there? Is that the right gap? I'm quite interested in all that.
So you set it all up while you're mixing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I want them thinking about that, because quite often they're so thinking about the detail of the mix and maybe even adding parts and so on. But I want them to start thinking of the record and the shape of it, and I want to know if the sequence works. I just had a really good example working with this band, the Cinematic Orchestra, English band who haven't put a record out for 11 years, but I was a huge fan of theirs. I am a huge fan of theirs.
I think I heard some of that.
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
great,
absolutely stunning record. But with them, we bonded very, very quickly. They're sort of my age, from English guys, two English guys, and we were having creative conversations about everything from sort of visuals to it went further than just mixing a record. So I was keen to know about the structure, and we had one night where they had, I think, sort of 9 songs for the record, and they had these couple of interludes, and they didn't know how to fit it in. And we listened down to a sequence of the record on a Saturday night, and my head was in my hands, whatever. It wasn't working. It just wasn't working. And I said, you need to go away. And they went and spent the day in Brooklyn where they had an Airbnb. They restructured it, got rid of the interludes, and came back. When we came back on Sunday night, listened to the flow, and it's fantastic. They'd done their job. So sometimes it's like that, a gentle nudge.
Yeah.
You know, because to sit there and hear the sequence of a record wrong it can be, for me, like debilitating.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
what? This isn't right. This doesn't
Right.
feel right. That energy should have happened earlier. Yeah.
I find with some of the younger kids who didn't grow up listening to records, just listen to tracks, they don't get the sequencing. And a lot of times I'll just be like, let me fucking sequence it, please, and I'll just give it to you, and then you listen, and if you don't like something, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
But please just let me do it.
Yeah.
And that helps too sometimes, at least to give them a reference point.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
Do either of you guys, do you ever find yourself, you're like finishing a mix and the artist is sitting there going, fuck, it needs another guitar, or we want to add a tambourine. Do you ever get into recording?
All
Or
the
do you-
time.
you do?
Yeah. I mean, people have sung lead vocals in there.
Right.
that's
you know,
amazing. In the control room?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. Right next to the desk. Yeah. On headphones.
Do you ever
I never
recomm-
say no to anything.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome.
That's kind of my, life goal. Is just say yes.
Right.
What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't turn out right. It doesn't feel good. You get rid of it.
Right.
My instinct is with artists, you say yes, and you go from there. Most of the
Bravo.
artists I've worked with are pretty seriously good editors of their own work. They're usually right.
Right.
I follow their lead.
Right.
If I feel something's drifting and we're wasting time, because time is of the priority, because the longer I'm listening to that mix, the longer we're all listening to it, the less we have the ability to make sort of purposeful, conscious decisions about to the benefit of the record. So I'm acutely aware of capturing it. If I feel like I've got something quite close, get it in stems. We can fiddle with that forever afterwards. But
Right. So your thing is you don't want to listen to it too much because you get used to it.
that's it.
And then you lose your edge on the perspective about it.
Yeah, so we go back to that first hour when I get here,
Right.
which is around, it's a bit earlier, but around now, I'll be out there with the dogs running around, not listening. I'll have maybe listened to the multi-track down 2 or 3 times. I'll have concentrated on one section to get a general balance. I might find the louder section, and mix that for 5-10 minutes. But I'll have heard the song 3 or 4 times. I'm not tired. I have a balance of the whole multi-track, and then I stop.
Right.
And just stop, have lunch, talk to the kids.
Do some gardening.
Do the bullshit. Do some gardening. Have a garden, exactly. And then when I go back in, it's like a woomph. You're just straight in. Like, I imagine it's like for a surgeon, you've opened the body up, you've done all that, and then you've actually got to go and do the business.
Yeah, right.
And that's when that happens.
Right.
And it's very direct, very instinctive. I'll have shouted to Brandon by then, I need this split up. I need a bass drum sample. The snare sucks. What can we do? So it's kind of structured my day, but it's loose.
Right. Right. But it sounds like you
It's
have
bursts of energy.
right. You have a system that has to do with energy that's based on your personal vibe and your, as you said earlier, your performance on. It's almost like you have a rider for your own gig. It's a solo gig. Here's what I need.
Yeah.
Get out of my way for the first hour. Let me dance, turn it up, walk the dog, do some gardening, come back in.
Do detail.
Do detail. And, but obviously that system has come from, as you said, how many thousands of hours of.
Yeah. It's also, it's, no offense, you get better with age. Your experience is everything in this game, because, like I said, what what takes me half an hour now took me a day 10 years ago. So once you spend a day, I used to have to prep my own sessions. So before I'd even start mixing, I'd have had to do 3 hours of declicking where Logic didn't print the fades.
Right.
By the time I've got to actually start mixing, I'm sick of the song.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know if it goes for a lot of mixers, but I'm naturally a lazy person. I'm looking for the fastest route from A to B every time, and I think that's a benefit to a mixer, because you're just trying to get there, and don't waste your ears. Don't waste don't get tired.
Right. It all sounds very healthy.
I think it's just optimal time use.
But I, in my own personal life, I would say that optimal time use is probably a good thing on every level.
I've
every
spent
level.
14 hours in the studio. It sucks.
Right.
yeah. But I used to do that thing. I would do the mix all day. I would take it home at night. I'd listen to it in the car. I'd listen to it at home. I'd make endless notes. I'm talking in my late 20s, early 30s. And, I needed to do that because I needed that information to come in the next day. So I would always ask for a day and a half for a mix because I didn't have confidence that by the end of day one, I wanted to send it to an artist or to an A&R guy or what have you. Now, by the end of day one, now I'm there in half an hour. So I have all that lovely time in the afternoon before I hope the artist shows up around 5, 6, 7 to go places, to try stuff, to mix, to actually mix. And it's that experience and, those 27 years I've been in these rooms, they start bearing fruit in that way,
And you don't listen outside here.
I never listen to a mix outside of this building. Yeah. Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ever.
Do you go home and listen to music at all? Or do you?
Yeah, I do. Predominantly classical.
Right.
It's what I grew up on. It's all my parents played.
Is that right?
Yeah. And then, I might turn it up a bit, but on the whole I don't. I try and listen as little as possible. And I never ever wear headphones. I don't think they're good for mixes.
Right.
Yeah.
Except for right now.
Except for right now.
James made us do it. That's just.
Some people, I understand, I work with some artists, like Jamie XX is a great example. His whole record is made on a laptop with a pair of headphones.
Right.
I understand that. You got to think of the listener. It could be a teenager in Iowa living in a small house who can't listen on speakers, and that's them. That's the way they listen.
Right.
I'm not completely yet prepared to mix for the iPhone speaker.
Yeah.
Right.
My son listens with the phone to his ear out the speaker, and that has changed somewhat what we do, because we don't, the sort of high fidelity element of music and the way that people consume music now has changed completely.
Right.
But I know, from working on Auratones, that if I'm hitting all the right things on the Auratones, if the bass comes through, it's going to work on multiple formats.
But also, you're 20,000 hours, or what your Malcolm Gladwell hours.
Yeah.
You know it's going to be right in all the different formats. You know what I mean? When you're happy with it. You know what I mean? You know that it's going to be right everywhere.
I think so.
It's not like you're fishing around anymore.
No.
Yeah.
There might be, sort of broader brushstroke stuff that people want to hear, and obviously mastering will help that, especially over an album.
Right.
For me, an album project is usually about 2.5 weeks. So I find the first 2 or 3 mixes, I'll come back to them.
No, really? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
It just takes me a minute to sort of get into the groove of that project, but that's fine. I don't mind that, because it's at the same time as I'm mixing another song, and by then 2 or 3 days in, the artist is comfortable, they've got to know the dogs, everyone's relaxed, and then they might come in here with Brandon while I'm mixing and start mucking around with the stems and start thinking about the sequence. And I like to keep people occupied.
Right.
Really important not to have artists just sitting around staring at paint.
Right.
You know what I mean? Get them doing things.
Right.
That is great to have the second room for the stem stuff, because I end up doing stem tweaks at the end of the night in the main room, and it's a little bit of a pain in the ass to shift gears. You know what I mean?
I think so. I really think it's important to separate the process.
Yeah.
That room is very much, you go in there to listen and to work and to do that, or that's all you do in there. Everything else is done outside. So I try and keep managers out of there, try and keep record label people. They can come in here, hang out, do their work and whatever. But in there, it's me and the artist, and we're finishing stuff. So if it's about getting to sort of distilling all this information and just getting the principal elements, be it the track, the artist, and the producer, whoever it is,
Right.
to the finish line.
Do you ever go back and listen to old stuff you did years ago? Or I mean, your records are so ubiquitous that you probably walk into Starbucks and hear something and go, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, I do. Well, I don't walk in Starbucks. I'm against them now.
Okay,
but,
I'm sorry.
It's all right. Yeah, I do. It happens. I call it like that supermarket mix where you hear the vocal and the snare,
Yeah.
Right.
and then you might hear one thing in the bridge in the middle eight. You know, but that's important. You know, I do that listen as well, where you can just hear it, and
Yeah.
you need to hear like certain things come through, and it's not easy listening to stuff you've worked on.
Yeah.
It never is.
Right.
It just isn't.
But you don't do it by choice, so you wouldn't go back by choice and go.
I'd say
I want
there's
to put on this.
There's 4 or 5 albums I've worked on that I do put on once in a while. Yeah, absolutely. A Frank Ocean Blonde record. I still find that an enjoyable listen. And we did that record over a year and a half, 2 years. It was very fragmented the way he works, the time he needed, the way he gets people in, certain other projects. Yeah, I don't. It's. There are a few records I can listen
That's
to.
great.
Is that the record that they tracked at Sear Sound, the Frank Ocean record, or is that a
He
different-
was all over the place, yeah. So probably he would have hit most studios in LA, London.
Right.
You know, he worked out of the Mercer Hotel for long periods of time.
I have like probably 1,000 questions.
Yeah, I mean,
because like I can get into specifics of all these different records, but do you still have the same excitement
Yeah, every day.
every day?
Yeah, it's like for me in my head, Mike Tyson's waiting for me in the control room. That's the way I look at it,
Right.
and I'm going to kick the shit out of him.
Right.
I'm going to win.
Right.
So yeah, for me, it's going to war.
Yeah.
And I get nervous still.
Mhm. You do.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get nervous that
I'm like, can I cut it? Am I going
can
to
you
make
gonna bring it home?
Do I have to nail it every day.
Right. Fuck
There's
yeah.
not really can't really have a day off.
Well, that's sort of an interesting pressure that you have,
But it's lovely.
having that as your sort of background of having so many hit records that people probably feel like they can just walk in there, add a little water, and walk out.
I mean, that makes it sound really easy, but it's not always
No, I know. That's what.
that straightforward.
Yeah.
I completely take on the pressure and the trust that an artist or a producer has given me to. They're handing over I'm the delivery, you know, I'm the midwife.
Yeah.
I'm a midwife of audio, if you
Yeah.
like. And it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of responsibility. But by the time I said yes to it and I've made a decision to get involved, I've committed myself both mentally and emotionally to the outcome of this. So I bleed for it. I mean, it sounds, look, I'm not dying mixing
Yeah.
records, you know, I'm not in Iraq or whatever, but there is a very, very strong commitment from my end once I get involved. And it takes a lot out
Right.
with me.
yeah, but think about the midwife thing. I mean, it's a legacy. You're helping give birth. I mean, if you accidentally pull an arm off in the middle, that kid walks around the rest of his life with one arm. But you know what I'm saying? You literally, if you're right, you have to deliver the record. It has to be, you know, people can hear it for years.
This is it.
It's got to be fucking right.
Yeah, that's why I was always interested in record making rather than, say, live performance. Last night I went to a show and I wanted to stop it halfway through and go, this should have come later, this part of the show. You know, I'm that guy who's
Yeah.
annoying. He's like, I go into stores and shit, when I hear speakers out of phase, I reconnect
Right.
them. You know, it's a lot. I mean, I've just done like, you know, examples. Like we've pretty much been mixing solidly since May, June of this year to now, and the week of Thanksgiving, I was supposed to start another project, but it wasn't the right time to start because of the holiday, and I got sick because I knew all that adrenaline had stopped,
Right.
and everything was saying you can check out now.
Right.
So for a week, I literally was like a Neanderthal caveman, you know,
Right.
at home, just because I was completely spent emotionally. And
Right.
Do you ever take days off, or do you do 6-7 days a week? Like, how many days a week can you do? Like 2 weeks straight, or
oh, we've done more than that. Yeah.
so
I
you
mean,
really work every fucking day?
Well, no, I don't want to. I try and
Right.
not work the weekend, if I'm honest. But the way things happen is that if I'm on an album project and say, like, in the last 5 months, I've done, say, 6 or 7 album projects in a row, there'll be odd songs that other people will throw in that I want to do.
Right.
When am I going to do those? I have to
Right.
do them at the weekend.
Yeah.
So then I've got to completely flip mindset and leave this sort of very, sort of closed environment of this album project and the clients, and go into a whole other realm of music maybe
Right.
for a day,
Right.
and then come back. And so it is. There's a sort of schizophrenic nature to it sometimes. And then obviously while I'm mixing an album, we're doing changes on the album I did a month
Right.
ago. Someone's asking for a backing track in Japan because
Right.
they're doing a PA. There's a constant.
Yep.
It's very fluid. There's no, So while I'm concentrating on one song a day and there's 100 other things happening in the background.
How do you keep track of all the shit you have to do you do lists?
He's called Brandon.
So he does that. So you just he gets all the emails and
So, with some producers now, because of the relationship I had with them, say someone like Mark Ronson, who I've been working with for 13 years, I think. We did Back to Black in
Yeah.
2006,
amazing.
5. He'll just go straight to Brandon.
Right.
And if Brandon again feels like some of the changes that are being asked for are more than just, can we have the backgrounds up a dB in the chorus? If he thinks they're more seismic, he'll get me involved.
Right.
He'll go, check this out, this is what
Right.
they're asking for.
Right.
So, it's a pattern of behavior where I don't even need to sort of tell Brandon, or
Right.
he'll know, we have that level of communication, which is just essential.
How long have you been working with him?
He's been with me 4.5 years.
That's fucking great.
Jeez.
Because when I change assistant, I have a year layover.
Yeah.
So we've just found, I think, someone new, and he's going to spend a year watching us,
Wow.
ghosting Brandon. Yeah.
Right.
Because then that change, when it happens, is seamless.
Right.
Right.
And what I found is I've had sort of, through Ben, through Joe, through Brandon, I've had 4 or 5 assistants who have each improved in a little way the process.
Right.
Right.
Amazing.
Just honed it in.
That's
and
so
it's-
great.
Yeah.
Did Ben come with you from
Ben came
England?
with me from London.
So
yeah.
he was with you. So he had already started working with you.
He had been with me, I don't know how long, maybe a year or two in
Right.
London. But he was, up to speed. And,
Right.
and then we needed someone when I got here, because obviously 2 Brits in New York, we didn't really know what we were doing. So we got to, that's when Joe came
Joe
on board.
came. Right.
And then I was thrown into some sort of pretty monster sessions, like a 2-month session with U2, where they took the whole building,
Right.
and everything's sort of ending up in C, but there's just stuff coming from everywhere, and I needed more bodies, literally.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So you brought Ben. You brought the VR. Anything of super other significance that you really needed? Any piece of outboard that you had there that you?
Yeah, my mix bus is it's been the same thing since I started.
That's the Manly.
It's a curve bender, Chandler. So that's the EQ. That goes into the Manly, and the Manly goes into the Crane song,
Right.
which is my A to D, and I'm waiting on, they've just built a new one called the Quantum or something. I'm waiting for that. I should be getting that in a few weeks, because it's like 10, 12-year-old technology. And
Right. And Brandon has a template that you guys have worked on.
when you say a template for...
When he hands you off the 24 tracks, you have your outboard, your effects.
I bring things up similar channels.
You do.
So
So
1
you
to
keep
1,
them-
yeah, 1 to 10 is drums.
Right.
12 is always the bass.
Right.
13 through 24 is music.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Vocals, the lead vocal 25, right in the middle.
What about effects?
Effects are on the far side.
The far sides,
So-
but they live there.
Oh, they're permanent.
They're
yeah,
permanent,
and
right.
I mean, there's probably maybe 20, 25 different outboard and hardware inserts
Right.
being used. So there's
Like
quite a-
all your parallel compression stuff and whatever.
That's
you do.
all. Yeah, that's all physical. Because then I can. Look, the main reason why I stay on the board is I can do 15 things at once.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm EQing the vocal, I can be riding the drums. I could also turn up the reverb. I can't do that with a mouse.
Right.
I can't do it. You can
Right.
only do one thing.
But I dig the fact, because I've seen him in the room, that it is athletic. It is like it's really
performance.
physical,
It's
and
performance. Yeah.
it's like it's jazz. It's kind of something pops here, you go there.
There you go. There, that makes you do that.
Right.
Then you have happy accident things. Like I'm a bit of a butcher on Pro Tools. You can ask anyone. Like I get. So suddenly I'll have pressed a combination of keys and something very odd will happen. Like all the vocals will shift 8
And
bars.
you'll love it.
And I'll fucking love it. Yeah, we did. We literally just this song that I mixed for this artist Brandi Carlile.
Oh, yeah.
She's just got nominated.
A lot of them.
So it's so funny. Literally on Saturday, this Saturday gone, Greg at Elektra asked me potentially, you know, I congratulated him. I sent him a text to say, well, you know, congrats. And he wrote back going, yeah, it's great. We should probably think of maybe doing an edit because we might resurface this for radio and so on. So literally I came in and did it. I knew what I wanted to do. But we had one of those great moments where, and I love them, they're just happy accidents where I took 8 bars out of a section, but I took bars, no, it was 16, but I took bars 4 through 8 out. Rather than, oh sorry, does that make sense? 4 through 12?
Instead of the end.
Instead of the end.
Right.
And then what I got was this really cool string mashup where they just jumped.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing I did was open the vocals, drag them out to the right. So suddenly the vocals are happening over a slightly different change.
Chord change,
And
right.
it was so cool.
Wow.
And we both looked at each other and went, oh, that wasn't bad. You know, yeah. I love those moments. I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, it really, really interests me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty great, right?
I mean,
What
great.
else?
You want to ask?
I'll keep going, man.
Tell us about a minute about Back in Black. I mean,
Back to Black.
Back. Sorry.
I wish I'd mixed Back
Right,
in
well,
Black. That would have been fun. but you know it was mixed in there as well.
Was it really?
AC/DC Back in Black was mixed in there.
In C?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it wasn't tracked. I think.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was mixed in there.
Amazing.
Yeah. Back to Black was probably one of my straight up most. It was a really profound sort of moment for me that week. Changed my life, changed my career, changed everything.
Right.
If you think about it, I walked in on the Monday. I'd never met Mark before, and the first day I mixed Rehab. The second day I mixed You Know I'm No Good. The third day was Love Is a Losing Game. And you know those weeks don't come by that often in your game. And
Right.
I'd worked with Amy on her first record, so this was 5 years before.
Oh, okay,
She
right.
you know, I worked with her when she was 17. I think she was a bit older, 22 when she made Back to Black around then. And I kept, it was one of those things that I did. I had a relationship with the A&R guy, Darkest Beast, who's now running Island Records here in New York. And after the first record, I would just badger him. What's she doing? What's Amy doing? When's she making new music? And he would just be vague because he didn't know what she was doing either. Right. And in the end, I asked him one day, and he said, "Can you start next week?" And I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" And sure enough, I did, and that was that week. And I met Mark for the first time. We mixed the record. It was all done quite quickly, and it's one of those things that we don't always get to enjoy in this game because I'm terrified of complacency. You talked about it earlier, of getting used to something, so we don't ever sort of celebrate those because they're gone, and by the time the record comes out, you've moved on to something else.
Right, the next challenge.
I can now appreciate that was a huge stepping stone for me personally, professionally, and built a relationship that went on to do lots of other things, and yeah, it was huge. It was just
With a voice like that, do you start with a vocal and build around it? Or do you just...
Well, I'll tell you a story about that record. It was interesting because when the rough mixes Mark gave to me or that I heard were all panned in a way I can only describe as Beatles-esque.
Hard.
Drums were hard left,
right.
Music was hard right. He tracked it with the Daptone guys over in Brooklyn. And so I heard these mixes and was like, damn, and for a day, I think I went with it. I panned everything the way he panned everything. And I don't know what happened, but by sort of day 1, 2, I was like, this isn't quite right.
Right.
And me and Mark obviously hadn't built a rapport by then. We didn't have that relationship but I changed it and I made it sound obviously more contemporary, more sort of, natural stereo, vocal up the middle and so on. But it was, it was a leap of faith I had to make.
Was Gabe involved at all?
Not in the mixing stage,
Right.
no. That was just sort of between me, Mark, Nick Gatfield and Darkest Island, and Amy. Amy came down, and I remember a big thing with that record was that she had expressly told Mark she didn't want strings on the record, and he covered that record in these beautiful arrangements. Chris Elliott did these beautiful arrangements, and I remember being in the room when we played her down, I think 3 or 4 songs, and me and Mark were sort of hiding in the back of the room, waiting for her to say, "Well, fuck all these strings doing," and she never did, and she loved it. It was
That's great.
If you could, write down or script the archetypal session, it was that one. It was, everything happened for a reason, and there was a sense of real purpose about it.
Right.
And lyrically, I mean, it was just stone cold. Like, it just punched you.
Yeah.
That shit gets you in the gut.
Real.
Yeah.
I never
super
hear that
real.
record and not just
Yeah.
focus on the vocal and just freak out. Like, just like, oh my God. You know what I mean? It's so captivating. Just the way she
Yeah.
sang, and it just,
Well, that's the goal in this game
Yeah.
is to produce something that people buy instinctively.
Yeah.
You don't. You're not. Your focus is completely on what's happening, on what's being said. So it was all about just making the environment for that voice
Yeah.
to sit properly.
Well, there's so many records I'd love to talk to you about, but can I ask you one more?
Two, there you go.
Rolling in the Deep.
Okay.
So, how much did you have to do when that came to you? Well, first of all, when that came to you, did you go, holy shit? Or did you just go, this is another great Adele?
Yeah, a bit of both. Again, I'd worked with Adele before on
Right.
her first record, and that kind of actually came through Mark as well, because we'd mix Back to Black together. Then Mark wrote a song with her called Cold Shoulder, which was on Adele's first record, and then from that I ended up mixing one of the singles called Chasing Pavements on the first record. And I got to meet her manager, Jonathan Dickens, who's actually now my manager as well, has been for 10 years. Yeah, with Paul, by that stage, his productions were like, I had to work for that one.
Right.
Yeah, that came in quite complete in sense of, there's no fat to that track at all. If
Yeah.
you look at it, and I love the sort of the choreograph, the architecture, if you like. It starts with a mono acoustic,
Yep.
goes into the pre-chorus, and you get two acoustics, left and right, piano. It starts opening widthwise, and then again, I look very much at music, and I watch films a lot. It's something while I'm mixing that I need visual help or stimulus, and to me, that record starts again, mono. It goes a bit wider in the pre-chorus, and then in the chorus, it opens up, dimension-wise, width-wise,
Right.
and depth-wise.
Right.
And that was the whole point of me, that you should suddenly just go, "What just
Right.
happened?"
do you get chills when you do that shit? Like
Yeah.
when you're listening, you just like,
It was funny with that one because I mixed it, and there was a few things I changed. Mainly the low end, the stomps. There was a lot of sort of stomping of feet, and I did add a few things to help the low end of it. But she came. That's right. Well, I'd mixed it, and everyone was happy with it. It was done, and Adele wanted to do one more ad lib, which comes in at the end of the song. I don't know if you remember. There's a funny little ad lib. And that gave me the opportunity to sort of listen to it again. And I remember adding a sub in the chorus. I took the bass and dropped it an octave, just again to get this thing to happen.
Right.
So you
great.
start in this
Great.
area. I love this idea of, you start in a tunnel and it gets wider.
Right.
And then, it's like that thing of walking into daylight if you haven't. That's what the chorus should do. It just went a
Right.
warmth like that. Almost to the point where you've turned it up a bit loud so you can hear the
Yeah.
front.
Right.
And then when that thing hits you, just
like,
Yeah.
pow.
yeah, absolutely.
And when you heard it, did you go, holy shit? Or just Adele's so great, it's just another Adele song? Because,
I mean, that's why I'm not an A&R guy. I have worked on lots of projects that have done well, but I would never, like mixing Rehab, I didn't think that would be,
right.
I thought that was slightly inappropriate to put out as a single, the sensibility of that subject matter and so on. But there are certain things you hear and you go, this is pretty good, this is pretty interesting,
And-
or it moves you.
Yeah. Did you have to do much to her voice?
with Adele?
Yeah.
No, she's a powerhouse.
Right.
The thing with Adele's voice is it fills the speaker.
Yeah.
It just fills the speaker.
Right.
So once you've got her sitting right, it's just what colors you want to add around her to influence emotion, to make you feel something. The performance is there.
And talk about melodies.
Yeah. And phrasing,
Right.
her phrasing, her, she's extremely precise about both her delivery and the way we communicated when we were mixing the records, like particularly on the last record where I started mixing it at Capitol in LA and then came back here. And she couldn't be with me. She had a kid, but we would talk in a way that the communication again has built a trust of 10 years of working together. Where, her writing to me, this sounds like shit. You need to, figure this out. Or I'm crying. This is fucking amazing. It went from those two spectrums,
Right.
and again, having done this for now like 20 odd years, I remember when people first used to listen to my mixes, and if they didn't like them and the comments I got, I would take them so personally. I would essentially think they were saying, I don't like you.
Yeah.
And they're not. Whereas now I know when I walk in, I don't expect the artist to come in and go, I love this 724 things you've done, but here are the 4 things I don't. They just go straight to the 4 things they don't. And that's brilliant. You're not dealing with all that ego crap. You're just like, this is what we're doing. This needs work. This feels better. We need to get out of the chorus quicker. That needs to be a harder jump, you know?
At what point did you learn that it wasn't personal? That's a hard one.
I'll still say there's a percent or 2 in there that takes it personally, because I'm invested.
Yeah,
you know, I put my person into it.
Yeah.
So, but it's not my record.
Right.
I'm working for someone else. You know, in this situation, I'm working for a client.
Right.
And once I've satisfied the emotional part of the music, the melodic information, once I'm satisfied, I can let go.
Right.
Do you feel that same way? Like if there's something you really love about a mix you did, like, and then the artist doesn't like it, do you try to convince them that this is better, or you know what I mean? Like, is there ever a time when you're like, no, this is crucial. This makes the chorus whatever. You know what I mean?
My instinct with that is that once I've done my first mix, I'll usually print it, maybe just before the artist has arrived, because I know we're going to go somewhere. I know they're going to want to hear something different. But what I found is that sometimes, quite a lot, they'll come back to that, and I call it my ref 1, because there's something about it that would have made sense to me. But of course, do another mix, do the changes. Again, never say no. Let the artist, because they've got to feel ownership too.
Yeah.
So if they just walk in and sit down and go, yeah, it's great, thanks, that's not a complete process to me.
Also, I don't think you can convince people to like something they don't like. You know, if it's not hitting them a certain way, there's no talking to them.
Yeah, but there's also sometimes people aren't used to. I've had people who like don't love delays in choruses. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. That's not exactly listening objectively. It's just a thing they
taste.
have.
Taste. Yeah.
So I might try to push back a little. Obviously, I agree with you. It's like their record. You know.
Yeah.
I never want to be the guy who a record down the road they say, oh yeah, he made us do this.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's bad.
No, I'm not that guy.
Yeah. I'm saying I never want to be that guy.
No, I'll explore every avenue. And the point is with stems is I'll be like, why don't you live with this tonight?
Right.
Have a listen tomorrow. Let's talk about it. If you still feel strongly, you know, I'll go down all avenues with the artist. Absolutely. And I find most artists being sort of, you know, good editors of their own sort of person will come to the right conclusion in the end, even if it means going back 5 mixes.
Yeah.
Right.
And it happens a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have been vocal with some artists to the point where I've told them a version. You know, I'll say working with Mr. Frank Ocean was mentally very challenging, because I would have a mix on the board and he would come in 2 days later with a completely different arrangement. I'm not talking like turn the vocals up, turn the hi-hat. It was a whole new arrangement. And that, you know, so a certain song like White Ferrari, I mixed that song 10, 11 times, but not just just completely different arrangements.
Almost different songs.
Almost different songs. That takes quite a lot of stamina. Because going back to like how my day is structured, how do you do that when you're mixing 12 different versions? So how do I get the same adrenaline, the same excitement to come in and do that thing? So I have to sort of I had to ration myself physically. It's to the point where sometimes it wasn't useful for me to be in the room.
Right.
He just needed to be with Brandon, or he needed to be with his my assistant, whoever, and Joe particularly at that time. Because if I'm in there, I'm a bit like a caged tiger.
Right.
And if you don't let me, you know, run around and do things, then I'm unnecessary.
Right.
And I'm so I so think about time management, and you know, it's just so important, like to capture that moment when you're actually producing. If you're not contributing, go home.
Right.
That's my thing. Like, if you're not actually contributing and the thing is being moved forward, you're in the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Let's get out of here. Leave Tom alone.
That's it?
No.
I could gas with you all day, man.
I know we could.
Yeah. I got questions for you, man.
You do?
Yeah.
That's not what this is about,
No,
bro.
go ahead, hit him.
How long have you been in studios?
Mid '80s,
Yeah.
early. I mean, I had actually made my first record in 1979. Then I
was 8 years old.
so was I. No. But back then, the business, at least in New York, was really hard to break into.
Right.
I mean, John is a warrior from back in the record plant where you only had major records, and if you didn't have a big ass budget, you weren't making a record.
That's just how it was.
Yeah.
Just how it was, and it was hard to kind of find yourself in
Well,
that
you were
world.
the occasional rich guy who had so much money that you could just do it yourself. But
I
that
was not the
wasn't-
occasional rich guy, but New York was a hard nut, and I did it in an indie fashion. I started making my own records early
Right.
on, and
You had your New Breed studio. You did
yeah,
that.
I've
You
got
were-
my own studio
And
on 30th Street.
You obviously came from a musician background.
Yeah, I'm a musician.
You see,
Right.
I knew very early on, like, the one good thing my father, bless him, said was eliminate the things you're not good at in life.
Mm-hmm.
So he made me do every job under the sun before the age of 18, from working in a factory to working in an office, because he was like, you're going to find out very quickly what
What
you're not,
you- right.
what you don't want to do.
Right.
And again, it's the same process as mixing.
Right,
You're
but
getting rid of distractions the whole time.
so just to throw this back on you,
yeah.
at what point did you go, hey, out of all these things I just did, I think I got this? Or did that
I
take
had
a while?
It took a minute. I had some friends who were in a band, and I'm talking, I guess, late 80s, early 90s. They were working on like an Akai S900
Sure.
and a Cubase on an Atari, and they had a little bit of success. And I had my own Atari and Cubase and an Akai, and I played. My mum was a cellist and a piano teacher, so
Met your mum.
You met my
Yes,
mum.
beautiful.
So I grew up around music, and I played every instrument you could, and I was fucking hopeless at all of them. I just didn't have it. I didn't have the patience. So I still don't have the patience, which is why I like mixing. But yeah, so these friends of mine started having a bit of success. I quickly realized I wasn't going to be an artist.
Right,
I just realized it.
right.
My mum had a friend who had a studio in the King's Road in London, and straight up the first time I walked in a control room, I was like, "You're done." It looked like an airplane. It looked like a cockpit
Yeah.
with speakers and
Right.
lights, and I was just enthralled.
Yeah.
I was just completely gripped, and then I started to see mixes, and it was the rise. It was the era of Clear Mountains, and once the computers started turning up, there was so much that could satisfy me artistically, because you can
Yeah,
manipulate
absolutely.
and create nowadays.
But the fact that you had Cubase and were technically savvy in that kind of world, and then you found yourself with Trevor.
Yeah.
That's like a marriage that's perfect.
And it
That-
was a perfect. It's I'm not going to compare myself to like. But I've read again, going back to Gladwell, like he talked about when people like Bill Gates and Jobs, they happen to be at certain universities at certain summer programs where the advent of technology and the computers, no one really knew what they did. It was just like it was a time thing, a particular time, and I was at this immense bridging. Like when I started, 95% of my sessions were 2-inch analog.
Right.
So I
Right.
came from the era of not looking at a screen, listening, counting
Mm-hmm.
bars, being able to drop in. And if you fucked up a drop in on Pino while he's playing bass and Trevor's there, you're fucking out the room.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so I got my manners taught early, and and that has never left me. The sort of discipline of a multi-track, and I carried on to this day in the computer.
Yeah.
There was an art to a multi-track, and basically the mix would be done by the time you'd finished recording, because you'd have written the vocal,
that's
you'd have
right.
written it as you comped
That's
it.
right.
So I was
Right.
so fortunate to be around that time to get that little bit of it, and to then bring in as the computers came in, because young people obviously are so much smarter on computers, like the people I work with now, my assistants. But I was that young guy on the computer,
Right.
and for a minute in London, I was like one of 4 or 5 people who knew how to run Pro Tools.
Interesting.
And I got work,
Right.
you know, because in those days you'd get the Pro Tools guy in,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and you'd give him the drum track, and 7 hours later he'd come back having, you know, it was the day when Pro Tools had one undo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
One undo,
Right.
and when you used Beat Detective to cut up a 3-minute drum track over 10 tracks, and you asked it to do the crossfades, it would take 4 hours.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah, And in those days, Trevor would be like, because we worked on a Sony 3348 with a 3324, and he would say, take a half bar out before the second chorus. I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
Because he knew it was 5-6 hours of work for
right,
us.
Right.
Offsetting with the links,
Yeah.
down to the 24. It was, you know, it was grueling.
Yeah. So you're informed by all that. That
Yeah.
has sort of helped create,
My
has led you to this. Do you ever yearn for that, or do you think that that's just
no,
Right.
because again, going back to, I know what I want to hear when I sit down and start mixing,
Right.
and then it's a case of doing it. And
Yeah.
what this technology allows me to do is just do it.
right?
But to the combination of, you know, a 1980s console, faders, and this technology, to me, it's unbeatable.
Right.
I've got this very instinctive, physical approach to the initial mix, but then the layers of detail and the nuance, the subtlety, the color, the shade, all that can be played around with in the computer world.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and it's fantastic.
So I'm going to jump back for a second because you mentioned on one of the Adele records that you went out to Capitol.
I thought I'd take a break in LA for the summer. So there were a couple of projects I wanted to mix, which were what I'd call not particularly high stress. I just wanted to, you know, I wanted to get out of New York for a minute. So I rented Studio C, Al Schmidt's room at Capitol for the month of August, I think. And
Did it matter that you weren't in your room? Did you feel
I did for a minute. I had to set it up so, you know, to get comfortable.
Right.
But I had that same problem, superstitious problem, that I thought leaving London and coming here,
Right.
I thought, you know, will it work? Is it the room? Is it the room? Is it me? What is, you know, and after a while you realize, you know, it's you.
It's you.
It's you. Then you make the room work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, within a few days of starting at Capitol, my manager Jonathan, who was also Adele's manager, was like, you need to start working on this. We've got it with the albums coming together, and we're talking like 8-9 producers over 12 songs.
Wow.
But a very small team of sort of me, Adele, Jonathan, and a couple of people back in London who were sort of curating, you know, what would happen. And yeah, I started mixing Hello within a
Right.
week of being in LA in a room that I didn't know that well. It was on a VR, so I was sort of comfortable there.
Were you ever an SSL guy, or
I spent the first 4 or 5 years on SSLs.
and any reason why you? Because there was a big ass SSL. There was a
I think it was Rich's, yeah, Costi's.
yeah,
Mainly because, again, Trevor had one.
right,
He had one in his home studio, so he actually had 6 rooms, yeah. Four in the main building, 1 in East London, and he had an EVR, like 60 channel. And the engineer that I worked for was a guy named Stephen Fitzmaurice, who I suppose was my mentor for 2 or 3 years. I was a very annoying assistant. I had no interest in being a good assistant. I wanted to be the guy.
Right.
So I was all over it. I'd be fucking around with effects. I don't know how he put up with me. I don't. I just, because if Brandon behaved like that,
Yeah.
I would throw him out of the room.
So you're that guy. That's great.
I was to the point where, you know, if the artist wanted coffee, I'd be like, the kitchen's out.
Let me get this.
I
fast.
wanted to make the records.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to be. I did not want to be making coffee and doing all that stuff. And the wonderful thing about Trevor and the way he worked was there was this meritocracy in that if you were valid, could offer something, whether it was a beat, an edit, he would take it. He didn't give a fuck who it came from. So sometimes he'd be like, yeah, Tom, go off and mix that or do something. Or I would program drums. You know, he was completely open. It didn't matter what your situation or standing in the room. And I feel the same way. Like Brandon or Joe, they'll just do stuff. And
Right.
like I did some Roland delay shit in the chorus and the bridge. See what you think? I'm like, great,
Awesome.
go for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm totally into the idea that of course there's a hierarchy of sorts, but there's not.
Right.
We're all here
Right.
trying to make the project the best it can be.
Absolutely.
And if you have something valid, go for it.
Absolutely.
But that's also the comfortability factor, right? Because the hours, when you put in that many hours, you're comfortable with other people adding. You don't feel, you know what I mean?
Not
You
a
don't feel
threat.
like it's like an affront on your, you know what I mean?
No, because that's where ego will ruin
Right.
a record.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where ego will just get in the way.
Yeah. Right.
It takes a while to get to that point, but
Right.
I'm completely comfortable with
Yeah.
with whatever comes from wherever.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's refreshing every now and then, right? Because then you don't have to think about everything, you know?
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, he just did something really
Right.
cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
you know, and And I find that when you start having that environment in a mix room, in a mix environment, the artists are like, they get excited.
Right. Yeah.
They start thinking about things. They start, re-looking at what they've done maybe, and it's so much fun. So much fun. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But you never thought, why did you go to the VR?
So the VR, so my mentor, if you like, the sort of, it was a kind of around the same time that I started assisting for Trevor, that this guy, Stephen Fitzmaurice, he'd come out here and worked at the Hit Factory for a year. Because that was still in the era of house engineers. At Psalm, we had 3 house engineers, and people came to work with them. They were good.
Right.
They'd mix big records.
Yeah.
But the thing at Psalm was, if you had your shit together, was you got to work with Trevor. Right. Because Trevor he didn't, and I carry it to this day, he didn't like people saying, is the bass plugged in? Yeah, it should be there. He couldn't handle that. It's either fucking there or it isn't.
Right.
And I have a rule about that. If I ask you to do something in a control room you don't know, say immediately,
right.
I don't understand, please show me. If you walk over to the patch bay and stare at it, I'm going to go insane. You're just wasting time.
Right.
There's no time to be wasted. So if you don't understand what you're being asked to do, I don't know what I'm doing, help me, Because I remember that feeling, being in a control room, looking around, going, "What is all this stuff?"
Right.
And it came to me in the shower one morning, where the patch bay connects to the board, the output of the computer depends on the input to the board, the output of the board. All these things start. There's a synergy, if you like, where you understand the flow.
Right.
And Trevor just could not stand any time wasting, and that was a personality thing as well. Like, you just don't bullshit me.
Yeah.
Stephen was kind of the same. He started mixing for Trevor on Seal 2, and I started assisting on that project. And we worked on a VR quite a lot at his house. For me, the VR is just so simple. I can mute, I can automate the fader up and down, and that's about it. I don't need to pick up a pen.
Right.
I can undo a pass while I'm writing. It's very simple.
Right.
The headroom is out of this world.
Right.
Is it the Neve flying faders?
Yeah.
Great.
It's just the most simple form of automation.
Yeah.
If I want to jazz pan things left and right, and I can do all that in the computer. That's what it's for.
Right.
On the board, I'm generally just dealing with faders, mutes.
Right.
And the mute is my favorite.
Right.
Yeah, take away.
Yeah.
And I use EQ on the board only for reduction.
Mm.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I just remove things.
Right.
My whole thing is to, the 5 principal elements of the mix for me are the bass, drum, snare, bass, lead vocal. 4 things, if you like. I run those through 1081s, and then they come back the insert return.
Right.
So the principal sort of things in the mix are coming through this lovely, signal chain, if you like. And
no compression, just the EQ.
no, on the vocal, there's a 1081 that'll go into a Blackface Yuri and then into a TubeTech CL1B. That's been my vocal chain for a while.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I jump around from that to, say, like an Altec I have sometimes, which I might use. The bass is a Pultec, a new 1081 into a Pultec and into the board. But I would honestly say most of my mixes on the board, there's very, very little EQ on the console. I just literally using it as the balance.
Right.
Find the balance.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
In the same way as, like, if you want more low end, turn the bass up.
Yeah. Right.
You don't need to EQ it.
Right.
Just turn it up.
Kids,
Turn it up.
turn it up.
Just you EQ by balance.
Right.
The trick with the computer, and the problem I have with the computer, is that when you turn it on, the balance is already there. The faders aren't all at the bottom because you've been working on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, you're already being indoctrinated into what it is.
Right.
You know, I walk in every day, and the only faders are up are 1 and 2, and it's got the whole mix coming out of 1 and 2. And within 10 minutes, I'll have done all the outputs, and I have 32 channels,
Right.
and then off you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Walter Ciro, who used to say he would love watching engineers touching faders. He said that was what engineers did, touch faders.
Yeah.
You were talking about doing vocals, writing the vocal as you recorded it.
Absolutely.
That was just, that was his thing. That's how he said he knew someone was an actual engineer, was when they had their hands on the fucking faders.
Yeah, I remember engineers that used to, you don't want to over-compress when you're tracking a vocal, but they would sit with the input of the Yuri or input of whatever, and, they knew what was coming, and just
right.
a little fiddle there,
Yep.
little there.
Yeah.
Because, what a singer, what an artist gets to hear when they perform, whether it's the initial performance, it's so critical. Like you'll sometimes go out to the live room. I remember from tracking days, and I'd pick up, let's say, like the drummer or the keyboard's headphones and listen to what he's, and I'd be like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
What? How is he
Right.
playing to this?
Right.
So my whole thing in that environment is like, I am constantly thinking of the mix, of finishing. So I want them to play to a mix.
Yeah.
Because they'll play
Right.
better. They'll
Right.
do something better.
Right.
The shittier they can mix, you know.
Yeah.
So it was very much geared towards that. So I knew I was always edging that way.
Right.
But
But so the VR is just, it's a friend to you. It's not, is it a sonic thing? Like, do you prefer it over other desks sonically, or you just know that there's headroom, it sounds great?
I know what I'm doing on it. It's
Right.
like that car you've had for 20
Yeah,
years.
right.
Or I just know what I'm doing. I know where to put it. I know how to get the right balance of the output of the computer, if you like, the output of the to the input of the console from the output of the console into my mix bus. There's a certain point where things just sit.
Right.
They're just comfortable,
Right.
and it does exactly what I want and nothing more.
Right.
And all the tricks and all the other stuff I've got.
Right.
I've got that's big screen and
Yeah,
all those
right.
hundreds of thousands of plugins that
Right.
I don't use.
Right. Which we're leaving you with some more.
Yeah, 200,000 now.
Yeah. Well, no, because I still use. There are 4 patches on the H3000 that I adore. Filter pan, drum processor. The flangers are great, amazing.
Yeah.
512, and a bunch of those 800s ones. You know.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
So, how we doing, buddy?
I don't know. I feel great.
Pretty fucking-
This is fantastic. It's so great to talk to you.
No, it's a pleasure. Yeah, it's good.
I know you
talking to
guys broke down a shitload. I've only met you like once up here,
Yeah.
so it's really good. To,
He's always around. Yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah.
he's an audio mensch.
Hey,
Hey,
Well, and you got to talk about this building a bit as well. This building completely fits into the way I think about music
Yeah,
and people, and just the respect that the audio community deserves.
that's right.
This place is built around the idea of making the artist, the talent,
Yeah.
feel safe, feel comfortable.
Right.
Remove distraction, but keep the spaces interesting, keep
Yeah.
the visuals interesting.
Totally.
I'm as obsessed with mixing as I am with like dimming lights.
Mm-hmm.
If I had another career, it would be a dimmer.
right?
You set the stage, and again, all these environmental suggestions, be it candles that smell a certain way,
Yeah.
aromas,
Yeah.
views, what film I'm showing that
Yeah.
day. People have gone on to use them. I just did a record with Mumford and Sons, and I was watching a lot of nature stuff, and they ended up doing something with the National Geographic.
With the boat on the river.
Yeah.
That's-
But they ended up doing something for the release of their record a month ago in London, where they showed the film
Oh.
and tied it in a cinema, in a theatre.
Oh, wow.
And they did a connection with National Geographic, and you watch the record and watch this nature show, and you'll find these incredible moments, like when a whale comes up and it's on the downbeat of the chorus, and everyone just goes, "Fuck!" And it happens all the time. Certain records. I remember working with Arcade Fire, and I watched Pulp Fiction all week,
Wow.
every day, all week, and just certain scenes and certain movement. It just puts you in a place.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Emotional.
Yeah.
It is emotional.
But to your point, we're going to talk to Lee in a little while. This place is, because John and I worked here back in the day when it was not what it is now.
Right.
Right.
It was a different kind of studio, and
It's
But-
been through some eras, hasn't
Yeah.
it?
it has been. And obviously, this is Jimmy's old. This was his apartment up
I think
here.
his bedroom was
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
But Lee has done an amazing job, and also he's cultivated people like you that are like-minded
Yeah.
in his aesthetic.
Yeah. Like I know everyone that works here.
Right.
I think I'm actually the oldest person that works here.
Right.
And
That's why you're so happy to see me when I show up.
yeah, you got a point. Actually.
Gandalf.
No, but fuck it, I'm 47 and I'm the oldest person here, and I love that fact that I'm surrounded by 20-year-old kids
Yeah.
who are like,
Right.
let's do this shit.
Yeah.
I was one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what you want to be around when you're making music. And
Awesome.
That energy, that hunger, that thirst for knowledge, and to do it in an environment that, like you say, Lee's put together here, it's all about the artist.
Right.
It's all about making the situation comfortable, balancing needs over,
Yeah.
you know.
But I've seen this space up here be transformed a few times. What you've done to it with this outside thing
Yeah, that's amazing.
is so great
Yeah.
because it's like there's fresh air up
I
here.
was confused when I was here a year and a half ago because I
Right.
was next door, and they said you could go outside, and I was like, "What?"
Why would I want to do that?
No, I was like, "When does that happen? How is that possible?" And I looked
Yeah.
around out here, and I looked at the plants. I was like, "What the
But
fuck?"
he spends time
No,
out
I
there.
know,
really-
it's great.
Again, after that first hour of mixing, I'll go and sit out there.
Yeah.
Why
But
not?
I'm saying you don't see that anywhere else. And like I haven't been to a studio in New York City where you can go out in a patio and sit and look at some
Yeah,
plants.
I need that.
Yeah.
I need a complete break from that environment so
Yeah.
that when you go back into that environment, you're purposeful again.
Yeah.
Um,
And it
you
was
know,
for-
we like you said, everyone works differently. Everyone finds their way, and this works for me.
Yeah, it's great. I just thought it was also fantastic to be able to, the artist maybe to go out there and smoke a cigarette
Yeah.
and not have to go down to the street.
And also, if they want to have a meeting, if it's a band,
Sure.
they can come
Right.
and sit here.
Right.
I when I first got here, we did the roof,
Yeah.
pretty seriously, and I remember loving it. And then I remember one day coming up there, I thought I'd have my lunch on my own, and the whole of Coldplay were up there having a meeting. And I was like, "Fuck you," you know, this is my space. But at the same time, I thought, amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
This is exactly why we do
Yeah.
this.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the people I've hung with on that back deck, amazing people that I would have never thought I'd run
Right.
into. And what happens is sometimes artists are working in D and I'm sitting out there, we get talking, I end up working with them.
Right.
Right.
That's, you know, I grew up in that Psalm where we had a communal kitchen.
Yeah.
And people would meet, things would happen. Suddenly you're overdubbing on someone else's record. Someone's, you know, that's just the best.
Yeah. That's
if you
magic.
you hold yourself away and on your own in a room, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something about a room, a building full of people doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a real community here, and
Yeah.
it's done with respect. All the kids are respected. There's no.
No, there's
It's
no.
not a corporate thing. It's really a very beautiful feeling.
It is. It's quite unique.
Yeah,
I can't think of another place.
and you're a big part of it. So
I
a huge part of it.
I don't know about that, but
You're a pretty big part of it.
you make your contribution,
Yeah.
you know. And for me, it's important because as a kid, I realised I got an education that was completely unique at Psalm, working for Trevor at that particular time. It was only available to 20 kids in the world.
Right.
And the only way to continue that and to get to pass that on is to come to a building, make a community of musicians, engineers, producers, and pass this knowledge along.
Yeah.
You know, it's important.
Bless you, man.
It's
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing to be able to, like you said, pass the knowledge on.
Yeah.
It really is really precious.
It's knowledge, and it's also it's knowing how to behave, how to treat other people, show respect.
Yeah, it's kindness.
Yeah, it's kindness, and yeah,
It's also savvy.
and
Being
a lot of
savvy
a
in
lot
the
of
studio.
mindfulness as
Yeah,
well.
that's right.
Very important.
That's right.
Manners are everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stuart. Manners are everything.
Remember that.
Get
Johnny.
on that.
I got to deal with him all the time.
Yeah, you make a good crew, you two. It's a good.
All right, great. That was wonderful.
Tom,
Oh boy.
you're a beautiful cat.
Yeah. Me and Stewie want to thank all you Gear Clubbers for listening to this crazy podcast we do. If you can, leave a review on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And don't be shy. We love hearing from you guys on the social media at Gear Club Podcast. Don't forget to go to gearclubpodcast.com for Spotify playlists, links and photos for the episodes, and my favorite hot sauce of the month.